Have you ever wondered what happens when age-old history, fierce competition, and undying loyalty collide on a baseball diamond? Well, you're going to find out today. Welcome to the battleground of one of the most intense rivalries in sports history, the New York Yankees versus the Boston Red Sox. From the infamous Curse of the Bambino to epic comebacks that defy the odds, this rivalry transcends the field, fueling passion and animosity that just seeps into the hearts of fans, as well as the fabric of two iconic American cities. So today we continue our series looking at the greatest sports rivalries in the world by turning our attention to the great American pastime of baseball. So buckle up as we delve into a saga of pride, grit, and glory that's been brewing for well over a century. Let's start with a bit of the history between these two teams. The background. To call this simply a sports rivalry actually is a bit of an injustice to Boston and New York, as these two major cities have been rivals since well before the American Revolution. A brief introduction to these cities before the dawn of the 20th century is needed, as it shows how the seeds of the rivalry in sports were sown long before the Yankees or the Red Sox or even baseball came along. For more than a century after its founding, Boston was the seat of culture and business in the early United States. Education was also centered in Boston, and to this day it remains one of the elite centers of higher learning. Think of Harvard, MIT, Tufts, Boston College, you get the idea. And given its location, it was a strategically critical port city with relatively easy connections to Europe, making it the epicenter of the American colonies. Conversely, New York was seen as dirtier and more overpopulated, and thus it played second fiddle to Boston for a very long time. But beginning in the 19th century, fueled by the continued expansion of maritime and railroad connections, New York City quickly and dramatically surpassed Boston in financial importance. And this was soon followed thereafter by a dramatic expansion of cultural and social importance, driven in part by the fact that New York became the main port for immigration into the United States. This continued into the 20th century when the continued growth of the city and the ever-increasing influence of Wall Street had cemented the flip of power from Boston to New York. So with centuries of rivalry between the two cities in education, commerce, politics, and culture, as well as only around 200 miles of geography between them, it should come as little surprise that these conflicts spilled over into sports. The rivalry. Just as Boston initially beat New York as a city, the Boston Red Sox were the first of the two teams to establish itself in baseball. The team was first established in 1901, and they were one of the most successful baseball teams for the next 10 to 15 years. They won the very first World Series, which was way back in 1903, as well as four more between 1912 and 1918, making them one of the most dominant teams at the time. The New York Yankees, or the New York Highlanders as they were initially known, were founded slightly later in 1903, right as the Red Sox were winning their first of many World Series titles. And it was in this debut season for the Yankees that they'd first play the Red Sox on May 7th, 1903. It's hard to know if these two teams knew that they would become each other's arch nemesis over time, but I think it's fitting that in this first game, they had a fist fight. Namely, Boston pitcher George Winter got punched in the head. It was not the last time punches were exchanged between these two teams, and not by a long shot. On April 11th, 1912, New York first unveiled their world-famous pinstripe uniforms in a game against Boston, and just 9 days later, Boston played their first game in their hallowed Fenway Park against New York. As is so often the case, these two teams feature at critical moments in each other's history. But when it comes to the action on the field, this era was dominated by the Boston Red Sox. Generally, it was a string of relative success for Boston and underperformance for New York. And it stayed that way right up until Boston made the most famous trade in baseball history. The Curse. In 1916, a Broadway producer named Harry Frazee purchased the Boston Red Sox on credit for $500,000. And it's important to note that A, he was a Broadway producer, and B, he bought the team on credit, because both of those factors played heavily into the events that were about to unfold. In the first couple of years of Frazee's ownership, he frequently butted heads with the star of the Boston Red Sox, this guy named Babe Ruth. You might have heard of him. Ruth had obviously been very successful in Boston, and this led to challenges around his contract, with Ruth threatening to hold out for more money. Despite what you might think, ball players back in the day weren't any less money-grubbing than their modern peers. After the Red Sox finished sixth in the American League in 1919, and with his Broadway musicals needing cash for financing, and with the looming challenges around Ruth's contract, Frazee made the shocking and infamous decision to sell Babe Ruth to the New York Yankees. The Red Sox received back $125,000 in cash, and remember, he only paid $500,000 for the team in total. He also received a further $300,000 loan, which was secured against Fenway Park. And less remembered is that Frazee sold multiple other players to the Yankees just up the road for cash over the coming years. And these decisions made him not just hated in Boston, but also hated all over the American League. The implications of these moves cannot be overstated. For the Yankees, it began their first true dynasty, as the team was competitive for the rest of the 1920s, appearing in 7 World Series championships with Babe Ruth, winning 4 of them. For the Red Sox, it directly led to a long period of mediocrity, which was a bitter pill to swallow after their successes over the previous years. And even worse, after winning the World Series in 1918 and following these player trades, the Red Sox wouldn't win another World Series for 86 years. The curse of the Bambino was born, and this heated rivalry was just warming up. When the Yankees opened their new stadium in the Bronx in 1923, they played the Boston Red Sox for the first game, and they beat them 4-1. 11 of the 24 players on the Yankees roster that day had played for the Red Sox. Babe Ruth hit the first home run in the stadium, which would go on to become known as the house that Ruth built. Ouchie for the Red Sox. Between the 1940s and the 1960s, the rivalry intensified, especially as the Red Sox and Yankees lay claims to arguably the best players in baseball history. 1941 was especially combative, as Yankee superstar Joe DiMaggio won the league MVP on the back of his still record 56-game hitting streak. He won MVP over Ted Williams of the Boston Red Sox, who hit .406. In 1946, the Red Sox won the pennant for the first time since selling Babe Ruth to the Yankees, a period of nearly 30 years, but obviously they did not win the World Series. In 1948, former Yankees manager Joe McCarthy came out of retirement after a feud with the Yankees ownership, and he signed with the Red Sox as their manager. The hatred is real, I'm telling you. In 1952, Red Sox outfielder Jimmy Pearsall and Yankee second baseman Billy Martin exchanged insults before a game in Boston and ended up fighting in the tunnel under the stands. In 1961, Yankee superstar Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris were trying to break Babe Ruth's single-season home run mark of 60. Maris finally accomplished this on the final day of the season, hitting number 61 in Yankee Stadium. And do you know which team he hit the home run off of? Yeah, you guessed it, the Boston Red Sox. In 1967, Red Sox pitcher Jim Lonborg beat the Yankees player Thad Tillotson. Both players yelled at each other, and then a brawl ensued. And during this fight, the Red Sox outfielder Reggie Smith picked up and body slammed Tillotson to the ground. In 1973, Yankees catcher Thurman Munson attempted to score from third base on a bunt, but he crashed into Red Sox catcher Carlton Fisk, resulting in a fight, and Munson punched Fisk in the face. Fast forward now to 2003 in the American League Championship Series. Red Sox starting pitcher Pedro Martinez hit Yankees batter Karim Garcia, prompting an argument between the two players, which ended up with both teams clearing the benches but no punches being thrown. In the bottom half of the inning, though, a pitch from Roger Clemens to Manny Ramirez was high and inside, and a brawl ensued. Yankees bench coach Don Zimmer, then 72 years old, charged at Martinez, who grabbed Zimmer by the head and swung him to the ground. It was insane. Later, midway through the 9th inning, Garcia and Yankees pitcher Jeff Nelson fought with a Fenway Park groundskeeper, Paul Williams, in the bullpen. 2 Boston police officers issued a report saying Nelson and Garcia engaged in, quote, an unprovoked attack, end quote, on Williams, and summonses would be sought for the 2 New York Yankees for assault and battery. Folks, I'm telling you, this rivalry is absolutely bananas. The legacy. I could go on and on and on for days about these two teams, but I'm hoping at this point you get the idea. These two teams respect each other and their history, but boy, oh boy, do they hate each other, occasionally violently so. And with nearly 125 years of history in the rearview mirror, the rivalry shows no signs of letting down. The Yankees and Red Sox continue to be wildly popular teams with global fan bases who are not afraid to spend big bucks to one-up each other. So there is absolutely no doubt that the next incredible incredible chapter in this story is just a pitch away. Thanks for watching today's video, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And as always, if you have a sports rivalry you'd like to see featured here on the channel, feel free to leave your suggestions. See you again soon, everyone.